Hello, Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Choujin X Chapter 7. When we last left our heroes, Tokio had been saved, kind of, by Ely. Nari was right about to kill him, but Ely comes in, sort of tries to help him get away with her smoke powers that she doesn't really have a great grasp on. And so she kind of lands still inside the zoo. So Nari enters her full beastification form, turning into a giant white snake, and tries to just devour Ely slowly to torture her. Unfortunately for Nari, fortunately for the rest of us, the form makes Nari dumb as bricks, and she kind of gets trapped in a cage for a while. It's a funny gag in retrospect. But Tokio is kind of taken aback by this 10-year-old saving him, and with that, he gathers the resolve to fight, to not kind of freeze up, and he enters into full beastification. And that's where we left off, with full beastification. We see Tokio kind of watching Nari and Ely, his hands covering his face. Chapter 7, Broiler. And then we get some more of Ishida's just really off-the-wall imagery, as we have this image of Tokio that just sort of splinters, like glass or something. And there's something kind of coming out of him. And we have, a vision or something of someone, maybe Azuma, standing on a balcony. And we see Tokio chasing after a young Azuma who's standing on top of a jungle gym, chasing after him again on the doorway to the school roof. And then again, what might be the scene in chapter 3 where Azuma rejected him, as Tokio thinks, Azuma, can I become? And we just see again just Tokio's hand, the now vulturified hand. Can I become? And he runs, like you? And he runs towards this light. I want to become like you. And we just see multiple images of Tokio. Almost kind of feels like his consciousness is fracturing. I feel did something like that happen to Kaneki at some point in Ghoul? It's been a while. A part of me recently wanted to go back and reread Ghoul, because there's a lot I've kind of forgotten. And I have the vague idea, I know Kaneki talked to his child self semi-frequently throughout Ghoul. I'm not quite sure if he ever had this kind of mental fracture. That might be what's going on here with Tokio. Interestingly enough, the third one, the second from the right, is kind of fully drawn in, but all the other ones are very kind of sketchy, which might just be, Ishida didn't fully draw them, like we kind of see. I think we've seen that occasionally, and we see with Exorcist every so often. But it also might be those Tokios are kind of less distinct, maybe? I don't know. But then we see, I guess, the real Tokio kind of clawing at his vulture mask as he just becomes more, the mask grows, and sort of his head is subsumed by the mask. We see, veiny neck. He's a vulture now. And then I think this is Tokio, much like Nari had, or no, I think this is still Nari. I was about to comment that maybe the beastification gives people that kind of black speech bubble, but I think this is just Nari. As we see whoever it is looking at Ely, and it's the same kind of cadence I think beastified Nari had last chapter. Okay, the wait's over. One non-stop trip to hell coming right up. And then Ely notices something above Nari, and Nari's kind of confused for a sec. And we see Tokio in the sky, headed straight towards Nari, shocking her. And Tokio calls, "Ah!" And Nari looks up, "Seriously?" And Tokio just kicks her. We see the impact of his leg on her snake neck. She goes flying. And Tokio lands on this sign, Vulture Choujin, Tokio Kurohara. And we see his beastification form, I guess. I mean, I question calling this full beastification, because whereas Nari became a full giant snake, Tokio is still very much humanoid. he's more a beast than than his base form has been. He's got, the mask kind of fully covers his eyes. We don't really see those human eyes under there, though that might just be artistic license. His hands look more like claws than more like paws, in all honesty, but sort of a weird choice than the hands we normally see him have. He looks less human, but he doesn't really look like a vulture in the same way Nari looked like a giant snake. And Ely is the one who comments, "You?" And Tokyo looks at his hand. I did it. Full beastification? Again, I think maybe Tokyo thinks this is full beastification, but he wouldn't really know. The only idea he has of full beastification as a concept is just from, seeing Nari do it. But anyway, Tokyo runs. I feel so light. This is kind of what Nari was expecting him to do from the beginning, though. Use his powers to gain this speed. I can feel the wild ferocity coursing through my whole body. Is this my Choujin power? With this body, I can do it. With this body, and he lunges towards Nari. Nari kind of goes up to headbutt or bite him. With this body, I've got a fighting chance. And he readies a fist. We notice for the first time, maybe. No, actually, it's kind of a weird thing. Because we see his right hand at the top of page 10. And he has 4 fingers and a thumb, right? A full normal, not normal hand, but normal number of fingers. But on page 11, he very distinctly only has 3 fingers and a thumb. And the fingers are a lot thicker. And I'm not sure which of those we're supposed to take as true. Ishida has kind of been playing fast and loose with, art this whole series. But is an interesting sort of discrepancy there. Anyway, Tokyo punches Nari, and I'm not quite sure it actually worked. Because we see Nari's maybe a little bent, but Tokyo's sleeves tear, and he's sent flying back. And he, falls to the ground. I don't think it worked. Nari's face there, though, is just super goofy. Really? Did you think that would work? And Tokyo just screams, "Gah! My arm's shot!" And then he calls to Ely, "Please run, miss! Use this opportunity to run!" And we see Tokyo trying to very much do the same thing Ely did to him last chapter. And Nari just taunts him. "Like that'd work, dumbass." And Nari gets up and readies her own attack. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Throwing more smoke at Nari, and Tokyo's shocked for a sec, and yeah, it does work. A whole bunch of smoke comes out right in Nari's face. But it didn't do much, as Tokyo comments, "It didn't hurt her." And Nari looks down at all of them. "Like I said, you're annoying." And she goes to whack Ely with her giant tail. Tokyo gets up and, saves Ely at the last second. We see the huge impact that Nari's tail creates, but Ely has survived. And Tokyo kind of drops her, and he goes rolling on some platform. And he kind of has to think, why am I all floaty? I feel too light. I can't figure out how to maneuver myself. And he notices I dropped her. But then he looks over and he sees that Ely is still fighting, still producing smoke. She's still at it. But the smoke is not doing much, because at this point it's really nothing but smoke. And Ely, exhausted, "It's no use." And Tokyo calls out to her, "Miss, you need to run. We can't win against her. Please get on my back." And either she does get on his back, or Tokyo grabs her. Either way, Ely is kind of resisting. "No, we should fight." And Tokyo snaps, "What? Are you crazy, miss? You've slowed down because your arm's busted. We might have been able to scram before that happened, though." Oh no, this is Ellie's line. What she's saying is, "We can't run at this point. She'll catch us. You've slowed down because your arm's busted. We might have been able to scram before that happened, though. If you carry me, she's gonna catch up for sure." And Tokyo thinks it's because of that, in parentheses, he's kind of hiding the fact this is all his fault, punch from earlier. "If you're not gonna escape on your own, then fight alongside me." And Tokyo's kind of shocked by that before saying, "Alongside you? Ugh, alright." And so they get ready to try to fight. Again, I'm not quite sure what chance they have at this point. Nothing they've tried is really working. Um, one of my friends told me the story about three arrows. This is Tokyo, and how rather than three people, and he's like clearly like fumbling with this story, and Ellie just snaps, "Save it for later. More importantly, what should we do?" And Tokyo thinks, "Yes, what should we do?" And Tokyo, like, maybe Ellie has had some combat training at this point. Tokyo really hasn't. Like, he has no idea what he's doing. He's been a Choujin for all of 3 days. Ellie too, but she's at least, like, had Hoshi-san back to train her. But Tokyo goes on, "Think a little. My smoke and your punch bounced right off her. Her scales are too hard." And Tokyo thinks, "Scales? Her scales are hard. Where is she soft?" And we see this flashback to the end of chapter 4, when she tried to eat him. And he gets an idea. "In that case, how about we broil her from the inside out?" And there comes our chapter title, The Broiler, which is kind of the first time the chapter title has felt, like, sensible. Like, the last, Shueisha Manga Plus finally, like, updated the actual titles to the earlier chapters besides First Apostasy. And none of them really make any sense. Like, I can't figure out why chapter 5 would be titled 44. First Apostasy, if I squint, I can maybe see it. None of the others really work either. But Broiler tracks now. And that kind of shocks Ellie, and she sort of grumbles, "You've sure come up with a frightening idea." And Tokyo kind of agrees, "Heh, you hold her off." Okay. I think that's, so it's Ellie, you hold her off. Okay, because it has to be Ellie who broils her because she has the smoke. So Tokyo's gonna work as a distraction. And so Tokyo kind of squares off against Nari. And Tokyo comments, "Hey, there are only 2 strikes against me. So we were still in the middle of a test. I don't know what I was being tested for, but..." Which goes into that question, is Nari kind of scouting him for the masked man's organization? It's not quite clear. I mean, it's obvious he would not agree, but I could see, if this masked guy is like collecting Choujin or something, then maybe, when he hears the two doses of the serum have been taken up, maybe he wants them for his side. There is, of course, the recurring. That's sort of one of the problems of being this early in the series, is I have really no idea how this world works yet. We're getting bits and pieces, and it's all very organic, and that's very good. But it's kind of hard to, like, theorize anything about this world when we just don't know anything about it quite yet. Anyway, I don't know what I was being tested for, but... And he jumps up at her. "How about you give me my score?" And Nari, maybe a little foolishly, opens her mouth wide to swallow him. And Tokyo jumps out of the way, barely with a snap, does it again, and he lands now on Nari's body and just runs. "So what now?" And Nari tries to lunge at him, but he jumps out of the way. "What am I going to do now?" And he, barely dodges her again. And we see some more snakes kind of crawling up the side. Tokyo thinks, "Ugh." And he sees them just wiggling up Nari's main body. And he grabs one of these extra snakes. "This is it. Gotcha." And then he, I think, uses it as like a grappling hook or something. Literally yeeting himself above Nari's head. And then grabs onto Nari's mouth and pulls her open. In the middle there, if Ellie attacks, he'll be hit too. "Do it now! Broil her!" And Ellie gets ready. "Broil her!" And she readies her fire. And Tokyo's just going, "Come on, come on, come on! Go, 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 go! This is payback for getting my hopes up!" I mean, I think that one's on you, dude. You're the one who thought you were getting a date there and not, getting a kiss there and not getting murdered. But instead, all that happens is Tokyo's mask breaks. And Ellie... Oh, no, so what happened is, the pressure, I think, causes Tokyo's mask to break, because Ellie at this point can only release the tiniest little puff of smoke. The whole plan just went up in I guess not smoke, but something else. Shocking all of them. Huh? It barely. And with that, Nari is back on the offensive, trying to chomp down on Tokyo. And Tokyo calls out, "Hurry!" And Ellie just tries to get her powers to work. Come out! Come out! Come out! Come out! Come out! Nari's just trying to get Tokyo to die! Come out! And then someone says, someone we don't know, a new Choujin, I'm guessing, first blade, lone sword, pierced viscera. And he's got this like card tattooed on his wrist. Uh, Heaven set. And he summons a giant knife. This guy, this new Choujin, pierces through Nari's head, maybe killing her? It's not quite clear how, like, is that Nari's body, or is it like a Titan where she's like somewhere in the back controlling it? I don't know. Is Nari dead? Um, and Ellie's sort of stunned. Oh? And Tokyo falls, kind of dropped out, and another blade has pierced Nari's eye. Ugh, you! And our new, like, sword Choujin just says, event. And more, I don't know what, like, all these words don't have a lot to do with anything. Pierced viscera, I can kind of see the viscera of, like, you know, a term sort of thrown around with, like, blood and guts. And first blade, lone sword, all tracks. Event, I don't know what that has to do with anything here. But all these swords all of a sudden come stabbing Nari to pieces. Duplicate! And she is covered in being stabbed in blades. Lone sword. He presses that tattoo again. Return. And that's kind of it for Nari. Her full beastification disappears. The man lands. He has what looks like a top hat on that first panel on page 32. It didn't appear to be there earlier, but that definitely looks like a top hat in his silhouette. It's too distinct to be anything else. He lands on the ground. We see all these like tinier snakes kind of, writhing after Nari's defeat. Tokyo's just stunned. Whoa! And the man just squashes one of the snakes. Whoa! But who is that? And the man turns to Nari, who's just lying there, back in her human form, maybe dead? Kind of unclear. You should know better. Prefecture statutes are strict about unregistered Choujin using their powers. Beastified Nari Sumaji. This puts an end to the pocket change you made through this Bori Lakish work. Later you'll give me every detail about who has been behind your orders. So he seems to be like part of the government, right? That like Nari, probably in league with Sandak. Nari, like what he gets on Nari for is using her powers illegally. Also, Nari's clearly alive, because she would have to be to give him every detail about who's been behind her orders. But yeah. Also, she doesn't seem to be. There's this bit about Boris Lackey work. It's a little bit unclear if that's like she's a member of this organization or if she's like a freelancer, like a mercenary kind of thing. A minor detail, but that's what I'm focusing on at the moment for some reason. Anyway, Nari just snaps at him. Fat chance of that, dimwit! And then the man turns to Ely. Otsuta, I believe I said not to leave the institution. Don't you know how to behave when you're living somewhere for free? That's a local from Gaga Prefecture for you. I guess is that where, is Gaga, the, like, kind of countryside that Ellie's from, I guess? Anyway, it's not really a top hat. It's a the hat this guy is wearing is, like, I've seen it before. I don't quite know how to, it reminds me of the one guy who has in the other high school in My Hero, the guy who had the hang up over Endeavor, the hat he wears. It looks like that. I'm not quite sure what that hat's called, but he's got this sort of like school uniform vibe. And he's very much like a stickler for rules we're seeing. Ellie was told not to leave the institution, and that's sort of the problem with what she's done. Anyway, Ellie tries to like figure out what his name is, I think. Was it Momoma? No, Momoma was very thoughtful, and so it was Momoma. I hope it's not Momoma, That's just I'm gonna struggle with saying that. So it was Momoma then. If you're going to take the teacher's good, or no, hold on. So Momoma is what the guy asks Ellie, and Ellie tells him no. Momoma was very thoughtful, and so it was Momoma then. If you're going to take the teacher's goodwill for granted, I ought to throw you in that cage over there. Again, what it's a similar thing to what I said before about not knowing a lot about the test, right? That like because we're seeing this world building, organically, only getting what Tokyo and occasionally LA, but right now just really Tokyo, what Tokyo knows. There's a lot of conversations that just do not make sense. And it's like quality writing that there's a sense that like, it reminds us that there is so much of this world beyond what our protagonist knows. But for now, it's like I don't know what they're talking about. So what's going on? But anyway, the guy looks over at Tokyo, and you, bird human, and Tokyo looks at him kind of confused. I'm worried. It's gonna be one of those plots where like Tokyo has to assert his right to survive because he's broken a law he didn't know anything about or something. I'm not gonna be a big fan of that, but let's hold our horses before they happen, I guess. You beastified, didn't you? Where's your registration? And Tokyo, who has no idea about any of this, registration? And the man says, your name then. Kurohara, as in the kanji for black field. And my first name is the then, and he kind of collapses. He's sort of like clutching at his chest. I think he's just sort of exhausted. He's used his power and he's finally back to normal for the first time in several days. And he's had a stressful hour. Uh, and the man misinterprets that the then. I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to be. My first name is Tokyo, but I don't know how the then ties in there. I don't know. But the man mistakes it. Zaven Kurohara? Strange name. And Ellie agrees. Zaven Kurohara. And the man calls in to, I guess, Sandak. We have 2 injured. Please dispatch a transit helicopter. And Ellie looks over at Tokyo. And tells him, thank you, Zaven Kurohara. You're a good fellow. I hope they keep calling him Zaven. I hope it's a running gag. I hope he's continually referred to as Zaven for like ages. But also, we see something. Like this shot here is sort of a landscape view of either the zoo or a good stretch of town. But is that we see this sort of like spire in the ground? My first instinct is that that's one of Sword Boy's giant swords. But I don't think he used a sword that huge when he took down Nari. I don't know. I don't know what that could be. Might just be nothing. Might be looking too deep into it. But anyway, we see a little bird holding like a stick. And then we see the helicopter land on a helipad at the zoo. And we see, I guess, a whole bunch of Choujin arrive to like fix things, I guess. We see some people like controlling a tree, some people running. And Tokyo jolts awake. School! And he sort of sits there. Oh, I think this isn't the zoo they're landing at. This is like Hoshi's training camp. Or his facility or whatever. This is the point where Tokyo figures out what the hell is going on in this world. Okay. But yeah, he's though reminding us that he is a child and is not really equipped to deal with this brand new world he finds himself in. His first focus is the school drama. But then he finally realizes he's not at home. He's in what looks like a traditional Japanese room. That's, I guess, working as an infirmary. Where am I? And someone walks in. Awake, are we? Looks like the Bastotol did the trick. And it's Hoshi Sandak. Do you like apples? He's holding an apple, and Tokyo's just so taken aback at Hoshi's whole thing, his fucking face, his weird fucking face, and he's just stunned, and he can only like meekly let out they're okay. Is this bodybuilder guy a Choujin? And Hoshi just like gets to work peeling him. Apples are great. They have plenty of vitamin C, and they're just the thing for when you're tuckered out. Don't worry, we gave you a serum. The venom won't kill you. Oh, right, the poison! Once he got beastified, he stopped thinking about the poison. I kind of forgot about that. But they did sort of give him an antidote. Now that he mentions it, And he feels a sudden twinge. Ouch! Careful, you busted your arm. And we see his arm is in a cast. You misjudged your output and didn't get the balance right. Very common for a first time in beastified form. Huh? And I guess Hoshi's now here to finally give us some exposition about just the wider world of Choujin. I am, though, glad that it does not look like they're gonna, try Tokyo for being a Choujin who used his powers illegally, given how little information he has. It would just be really mean. Anyway, Hoshi continues, This is Yamato Mori, a private organization where we nurture good Choujin. I'm Hoshi Sandak. I'm an instructor at Yamato Mori, and he holds out the apples for Tokyo. I'm a Choujin too. And Tokyo looks at him. A Choujin? Please eat these, skin and all. And then Tokyo just bites down on it. It was the sweetest apple I've ever had. And we see Ely and someone else, maybe Hat Guy. Ely, is he awake? They're sneaking, hiding behind a little wall, watching this. To be continued, and that's where we leave off. So yeah, this is a conclusion, I guess, to the sort of introduction we've had to this world. You know, it's time for Tokyo. Now that he's had his first taste of what being a Choujin is, it's time for him to it's time for him to learn a bit about the world that he's suddenly thrown into. It's the moment that Kaneki becomes a member of Anteiku and gets to learn more about ghouls. It's a similar beat to that. And I don't particularly like comparing this series to Ghoul too much, but there are times when it fits, and this is kind of one of those times. You know, now he's at a good-natured organization, kind of similar to Anteiku, though, of course, a bit more legal than Anteiku. And this is the chance for him to get some exposition and just some learning about how to deal with this new situation he's in. But that's a comment for next chapter. This chapter, though, kind of goes to show that Tokyo is just not good at this yet, right? Like, he has a bit of a breakthrough when he manages beastification, but it doesn't work terribly well. He gets one kick in, just because Nari's kind of surprised, I guess. But then he tries to punch her and just fails. And from that point on, he's kind of useless for the rest of the chapter, which, reminds us that Ely and Tokyo have been Choujin for about 3 or 4 days. Like, the plane crash is the same day as the Tokyo, or maybe the day before Tokyo took the shot. So both of them are kind of equally inexperienced, and they both end up completely losing against Nari, a much more experienced Choujin. It's a good plan on Tokyo's part, but it doesn't really work when Ellie is just sort of out of power or can't really control her power enough, and it all ends up falling apart. And so, I could see a complaint could exist, that it's a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, this guy shows up to save them, but that's just the part of the story we're at. It reminds us that our heroes are weak, they are complete novices at this Choujin thing, and there are people who can train them. Honestly, it's so obviously not really a bad Deus Ex Machina that I can't really see any complaints about it. Not from any, good-natured, fair critiques, but it is something that could happen, I guess, so I'm defending against it preemptively. And so, yeah, Hatboy easily takes out Nari, without breaking a sweat. And maybe that's just he's so powerful. Or it's just that Nari just had no idea he was there until there was a sword in her face. But yeah, Nari's taken in, I guess, for questioning. And Tokyo is now at Yamato Mori, where he will have to, I guess, learn more about this wild and weird world he's ended up in. And yeah, All in all, it's a good finale for that fight. And now it's time to sort of learn more about this world that we've just not really gotten the chance to see yet. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That's all I'll say on that. So yeah, I'm gonna leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe. You know, do whatever makes you happy. You know, and remember, your life is your own. Okay, bye.